right, welcome to Split Window Studios. Thank you for joining us. This is our first attempt at Sit Down with the Symphony. My name's Aaron Bucy. I'm the Executive Director of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, and thank you for joining us. Our series is planned to be bi-monthly. We're going to feature guests and artists from the Sherman Symphony, as well as supporters, advertisers, and volunteers. So be sure and subscribe, bookmark, and check in often on our social media pages so that you don't miss anything. Our upcoming event, the big event, is the start of the 2023-2024 concert season. October 28th at 7:30, Kid Key Auditorium in Sherman will feature Tchaikovsky's No. 6 Pathétique, so you don't want to miss that. It is actually being played on the 130th anniversary of the original performance of the show. So come down to Kid Key Auditorium. Tickets are available at shermansymphony.org. We have several ways to stay involved with the symphony. If you'd like to donate, please donate through the website or reach out to anybody that you may know that already is affiliated with the symphony. If you would like to be an advertiser, we always welcome advertisers for the program. Advertisers will be featured on shows such as this, will be featured in social media, digital marketing, digital advertising, and everything we can get you involved with. So definitely reach out if you're interested in being a sponsor or an advertiser. So welcome everybody. We're in Split Window Studios in downtown Denison, Texas. We want to thank them for the wonderful facility. And if you have any recording needs, definitely reach out to Chris or Tony. They have a fantastic setup and years of experience to get you just the right product for whatever project you have going on. Today we're going to be visiting with a gentleman who is the brains behind the music, the artist that chooses the music that we hear every year, and the inspiration to lots of musicians, lots of people in the community. He's been the heart of the symphony for almost 32 years. Daniel Dominick has joined me here. He is the Maestro, music director for the Sherman Symphony, and the music chair of Austin College. So Dan, welcome to the show. You're the guinea pig, and we're going to discuss all kinds of things on what we can get into.
Thanks, Aaron. And I just have to say that was really smooth. The whole thing, the opening, just went like that.
Right? They didn't even tell me they were starting. They just said action, and so we went with it. So hopefully everything we talk about today will go just as smooth. So lots to talk about. This is not your first season with the symphony, obviously. No. So let's just start off easy. How did you get involved with the Sherman Symphony, and how's the experience been for you?
Well, in graduate school, I began conducting an orchestra. I got my graduate degrees in musicology and conducting. And so I conducted the University of Florida State University's orchestra, the University Orchestra. And I was looking for a job that would have musicology, music history, teaching, and have an orchestra. And then this job opened up. So Austin College, I'm full-time there where I teach music history and piano and other classes. And then separate job is the Sherman Symphony Orchestra.
Okay. So now the history of the symphony, which is something that we can get into a little bit, but it's probably a full class on its own if you really want to go back in the full history of it. Cecil Isaac was the original conductor and started it, and it was primarily a part of Austin College's program, I believe, at that point.
That's true. We are still a part of Austin College's program, so the Sherman Symphony Orchestra is an ensemble that students in the college can get credit for being in.
Right.
And they, of course, have to be the most skilled players to be able to be in that orchestra, but they can get credit just like they can be for our bands or choirs.
Oh, very cool. So how did you learn that there was going to be an opportunity with the symphony? Were you already at Austin College when that came about?
No, both, because Cecil Isaac was also faculty at the college and did the orchestra. Both positions came open at the same time. And that time, paper notices of jobs was mailed around to different music schools. And Florida State's a really big music school, so they got that. My major professor saw that listing and just took it off the board and gave it to me and said, hey, this is your job.
Wow. So the Sherman Symphony brought you to Sherman from Florida?
Yes.
That is the reason for the move.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. That I really didn't know that. I made the assumption that you were probably already involved with it and whatnot. Well, very cool. So that came about while you were in Florida, so you probably weren't following along with the Sherman Symphony from Florida State, right? So when you got to Sherman and you took over the symphony, whatever state the program was in at the time. How has it evolved since you began being part of it?
When I first came, the orchestra did 4 concerts a year, and our Christmas Pops, which we now do as Saturday and Sunday, was only one of those days. I think it was just Saturday night.
Right.
So my first season, we had a November 2nd concert, we had the December Pops concert, we had a February or March concert, and then we had an April concert, and that was it. Now, this season, we have our October, we have 2 children's concerts, we have 2 Pops concerts, we have March and April, and we're also doing a run-out concert to Ardmore in December, another performance of our Pops. So we have 8, I think that's 8 concerts this season, 7 or 8.
So unfortunately, the name Sherman Symphony Orchestra doesn't really describe what the Sherman Symphony Orchestra participates in. So Ardmore, Gainesville, in the past have been to Bonham and Greenville, I believe.
We have.
Durant, maybe, I think at some point.
We haven't done a concert there, but we're still in talks for maybe getting one in Durant too.
So people hear Sherman Symphony Orchestra, and even people in Denison think, oh, that's Sherman, that's not Denison. But that's really not the case, right?
No, it's not. In fact, if you think about any orchestra in the United States or anywhere around the world, you know, the Berlin Philharmonic or the Dallas Symphony or the New York Philharmonic or whatever, they're just names. We've thought about lots of other kinds of names that would be kind of maybe more inclusive, but every orchestra I know has a city name on it, and this one just happens to have Sherman. But we are really, all of our players are from Denison and Sherman and Durant and Plano and McKinney and Denton and all over.
Right. Well, here's a question that just popped in my mind. So is this going to be your 32nd season?
This is my 32nd season.
So in your 32 years, have you ever played an instrument with the Sherman Symphony, or have you always been the conductor?
Played? Oh, yeah, I've played a couple times. One time, one of the professors at the college had arranged something for us in the Christmas concert, so he conducted the orchestra, but I played cymbals.
Oh, okay.
So, and on the children's concert, we normally have a time in the show where one of the narrators conducts the orchestra, and during that time, I do the slapstick.
Right.
For that, so I play every season. I play something.
So you're a piano player by nature, correct?
Yes.
So you stick with the percussion instruments, with the cymbals and the piano.
Yeah, and I have played piano a couple times. I played Beethoven Piano Concerto, number 5. I played that 20 years ago here, and I played Rhapsody in Blue, the Gershwin piano and orchestra piece. I played that about 15 years ago with the orchestra.
Okay. Right.
So I've done solo things in addition to some orchestral things.
You've gotten to actually turn around and face the audience and perform, right? Yeah, good. So, well, we'll be right back with Dan. We're going to take a break and make sure our advertisers and our sponsors get mentioned, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Dan Dominick, the music director of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra and the head of the music department at Austin College. Is that the correct title, the head of the music department?
Yeah, head or chair.
Music chair, all right. We're just talking about how the symphony has evolved since you took over. This will be your 32nd season. So one of the things I did want to talk to you about was some of the other experiences you've had outside of the Sherman Orchestra. What other big bands have you been able to participate with, conduct, etc.?
In graduate school, of course, I did the university orchestra as an assistant. It wasn't my group, but as an assistant conductor. And then for graduate work, we had to make our own orchestras to make concerts. So there's 2 or 3 that I organized just for those concerts. But I've also conducted some high school groups, and I've conducted some university groups. I was at Baylor a few years back doing it was a competition for composers, so I got to conduct one of the pieces in the competition. I've been to Europe several times and conducted some smaller medium-sized orchestras, nothing big and fancy.
So what would you consider a small, medium-sized orchestra?
Well, I mean, I guess the orchestras are all the same size, but the city is a smaller city. So it's not one of the big name groups. It'll be, you probably never heard of the
Berlin.
No, you probably never heard of Zlín, Czechoslovakia.
No, you're right.
Or Czech Republic, I guess.
Well, how do those opportunities present themselves? How do you get involved in those types of things?
So either you have to have a manager who can kind of help set those things up, or there are organizations you can actually pay to help find places that you can conduct in.
So how many times? Let's narrow it down to orchestras in Europe. How many times have you participated in Europe?
3 times. Once in Poland, once in Bulgaria,
Okay.
and once in the Czech Republic.
So in those instances, did you choose the music selection for those, or were you asked to come in after it was selected?
I did.
So how do you approach music selection for an audience that I would assume you're probably not familiar with the region or the population?
These orchestras were big enough, and they were full professional orchestras without any like volunteer players or any community players. They're all professional orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed that their audience was used to standard orchestral repertoire,
Mm-hmm.
the usual names of composers, the usual kind of list of things. And then I did pieces that I wanted to do. And like the Bulgarian orchestra, when I had given them a couple of program choices,
Mm-hmm.
they said, hey, we just had done this piece, but could you do this instead? And I was like, okay. Well, they also had a guitar soloist that they wanted to play with the orchestra, and he already had a piece that he wanted to do. I didn't know it, so I had to learn it for that concert.
Okay.
But so it's kind of a give and take of what you want to do, maybe what they're already planning to get done in the season. So that happens.
So in comparison with selecting music for the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, what kind of things do you look for in the movements and arrangements when you're selecting for Sherman?
For Sherman. Since our orchestra is not fully 100% professional, we have some community players who are very good players, but that's not what they do with their life. They
Right.
do other things. And since we have a few students, including usually once in a while, 2 high school players,
Oh, wow. Okay.
very good players, but they're also high school players, I have to kind of guard what we can play and their ability level.
Right.
So there's some big pieces or really complicated pieces that will either figure don't really have the rehearsal time to get that done, or I can do a difficult piece, but then I have to pair it with some other pieces that are not as difficult, so we have enough rehearsal time.
Right.
So I'm thinking about, with the Sherman Symphony, to make sure that we have the ability to play the things we are going to play.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So, with the addition of community players, college students, and a couple of high school students, has that? So, a lot of people probably don't realize how integrated the Sherman Symphony Orchestra is with education in the entire area, in the Texoma area. And the question, as you're talking, came to me: if you're incorporating the student players, has that been something that came because of the music education participating with, or did the music education come about because you wanted to up the students to the level that they could participate with the orchestra?
That's a great question. I really feel like it's because it's always been our mission to have education as the heart of what we are about.
Mm-hmm.
If someone comes to the sits in the audience, comes to the concert for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
they won't know there's any student players in that.
Sure.
It'll sound fully like a professional orchestra because that's the level we play at.
Mm-hmm.
And we choose pieces, we rehearse in a way, we are going to have a fully professional performance.
Mm-hmm.
But as the kind of the heart of our mission, we want to bring along new performers.
Right.
And so the best of the high school or college students that are ready to be in the orchestra can be in the orchestra and learn how to practice at this level, rehearse at this level, perform at this level.
So it's a good experience for them to move on into their musical career
It really is.
as a professional.
It really is. There are very, very few places that a student performer can learn to play at this level.
Mm-hmm.
You can be at a big university, and those big university orchestras are really very fine. They play really well. And if you went there, you'd think they sound professional too.
Right.
There's nothing taken away from those. But if you're not at a big university, and if you're not a music major,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to learn and then play at this level, there are very few opportunities.
Right. So the international experience that you had, has that affected, did that change anything in your approach to the way that you conduct music, interact with musicians? Did you learn some new things yourself as a conductor when you were overseas?
I always learn. Every time I get in front of a group, whether it's my group or someone else's, I always learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I think in my head will be the obvious movement to show the thing I want, sometimes ends up being completely opposite of what I intended. So I'm always learning things. I did learn something really interesting about these professional orchestras. Growing up as a trombone player in the band and then orchestra, and playing piano with some groups too, you kind of have these ideas about trombone players like this, trumpet players are like that, clarinet players are like this, whatever. I found out going to even the different countries, there's kind of a commonality of instrument type and personality type kind of going together.
Right.
It's really funny because when I was first here, I did a conducting workshop where I was a student because I was 29 and still kind of learning things. And this big 110-piece orchestra of professional players there in the Czech Republic. And the piece that we were doing had a piano part, but the pianist wasn't there. So I just walked back and on my own, sat down at the piano and played the part. And the players that were in front of me, because right back at the orchestra, were all turning around looking, who's this person? Because they knew that their pianist wasn't there.
Right.
So that kind of gave me some street cred because I was now playing with them. But I also from behind could see that some of them were really just goofing off. They had like magazines instead of the music. And they were either making up parts. One guy in the trombones was like leaning over and playing the horn part instead.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily happen in a concert, but in the rehearsal, the conductor, who's a student conductor too, didn't note any of that.
Sure.
And the players were getting away with it because they were having fun, but also kind of like not happy to be a conducting group for students.
Right.
But so you learn a lot of things from the inside if you go to these things, if you work with other groups.
That's funny to think about hijinks that would be going on. Especially, it hadn't occurred to me that you can't really see what they've got out on their music stand. So, do you have any occasions that come to mind, G-rated, obviously, that any memories of any hijinks during rehearsals or performances that you've experienced with your musicians?
Not here in Sherman, although there are a lot of times where we laugh in a rehearsal because I've said the wrong place, or I don't have my glasses on, I can't read the rehearsal number, or I just make a mistake in my cues, or something like that, right? I mean, there's just those times where it's kind of light, or where someone makes a mistake and we all kind of go along with that. We never ever make fun of anyone.
Sure.
We never pick on anyone because that's not the right kind of atmosphere for teaching anyway.
Sure. But
surely in an environment where you're pretty vulnerable as a person in your music making, no one wants to be made fun of. Right?
Sure.
So that doesn't ever happen. But if they're making things up as they go along, I know it because I know the music, and if there are wrong notes, we're stopping because of the wrong notes. If they play the wrong rhythms, we're stopping because I know the parts.
So it's still practice.
It's still practice, yeah. So,
have you ever experienced the Darth Vader march as you came to the stage?
No.
No, that's good. So
Don't
no reputation like
I
that.
should do that. No, we haven't done that.
So, well, let's take a break, give you a chance to catch your breath.
Okay.
And so we'll be right back after. All right, welcome back. We're here with Dan Dominick, the music director and conductor of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra. I'm Aaron Bucy, the executive director of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, and thank you for joining us on our pilot episode of Sitting with the Symphony. I guess for lack of a better name, that's what we're going to call it. So, Dan, we've been talking about, we've actually covered a lot already. We've talked about some of your international experience with other orchestras. We've talked about some music selection. We've talked about some of the education programs and how they've assisted with the development of the Sherman musicians. You mentioned a while ago in the last segment that there was an instance where there was a guitar soloist with one of the orchestras. And it's interesting to me that I'm glad you brought that up because personally I love it when there's a soloist that is accompanying the symphony. Piano is my favorite. I've seen a couple of different world-class pianists accompany symphonies in the past, and I really enjoy those types of shows. Is there anything like that coming up with the Sherman Symphony?
Yeah, we usually do a concerto sometime during each season, or sometimes we'll do a big vocal piece, but something that's different and additional to it. In our April concert, April 27th, is we're doing the Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto. And so the pianist is coming from Florida. He's a Texas guy, but he got a new job this past year at the University of Florida. And he's coming back to play with us. He's played with us before. He played a a Brahms piano concerto about
Okay, good.
7 or 8 years ago.
So he had a good experience.
Oh, it was
obviously,
great.
He's coming back. So when you have a soloist with the symphony, how does that affect rehearsals? So if you have your strings and you're slowly building your rehearsals to full head count, does your soloist come in and rehearse with the symphony, or is the first time the symphony really hears the soloist at showtime?
Yeah, we don't get the soloist until the Friday night. We have a rehearsal on Friday night before a Saturday night show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll have the soloist will come in on Friday night. And that'll be the first time we work with him or her.
Wow.
And then we'll have one more time to go through it on Saturday afternoon, because we'll have an afternoon, just kind of a run through, kind of address. And so that'll be the second time we have it, and then we'll do the show.
So is there ever an issue where the introduction of a new instrument that usually is fairly dominant in the sound because it's the featured soloist, is there ever an issue where musicians get a little off, or it's distracting, or is everybody pretty well sail through?
Yeah, I think when we first, maybe 30, 40 years ago when the orchestra was a little younger, that may have been a problem sometimes, but it isn't a problem now because we rehearse in a way that we know our part. The orchestra at this point really trusts me, and it may sound kind of funny to say, but I bring the orchestra in and out of the solo parts. If we're just playing straight through, they don't really care who's playing with them. They don't just play,
Okay, right.
But when you have a soloist, there are times where the orchestra comes in and out, where the orchestra is actually accompanying the soloist. And since they trust me, I can bring them in. As long as I know my part really well, and I'm really on my part, then there's not going to be a problem.
Right. So I'm not a musician myself, and it's amazing to me that I know with the professional musicians, I've been exposed to it enough to know that the professional musicians can come in and feel their parts, do the solos without really much interaction or rehearsal with the other musicians. I think that's just wild to me. I would have to repetition. But as the conductor of an orchestra or performance, you kind of touched on it a little bit. You bring in the symphony to support, and you give them their indicators. Tell me a little bit about what you look for as a conductor during the performances. Like, what timing situations are you really making sure of and paying attention for?
It all depends on kind of what we're playing. The really, really difficult things, a lot of what I'm doing is just making sure that people are in the right places. That's kind of what a lot of the conducting is. Can I get them in and out and can I keep everything together? But once we've gotten to the point where in our rehearsals where we feel like we've got that covered, we really start working on musical things of shape and slowing down, speeding up, the little bit louder, the little bit softer kinds of things, maybe even things that aren't even written into the music, but that kind of give the music life and shape. And I try to do more of that in a performance than we have ever in a rehearsal.
Right.
Is there, for me, at that point, enough freedom to, the orchestra knows its stuff well enough? Can I do some additional things that we've kind of gotten close to but never quite done in rehearsal? Can we do those in performance?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a little bit scary. It's very exciting. And I think the orchestra really loves it when we feel that kind of confidence and trust back and forth that we can do that.
So you think of stage actors, and if you get to an issue that comes up and they just got to cover and make it happen, figure out a solution to get out of that situation, that's what it makes me think of when you're saying, hey, we're going to try a little louder, hang on to it a little longer. Is it a similar kind of ad-lib like that where you're just kind of feeling the moments?
No, I think anything that I do can't be ad-lib because the things would really fall apart. But I have to have an idea, kind of a goal or a vision for the piece. And as we start rehearsals from the very first day to the performance, I'm trying to build the orchestra to that place.
Okay, I see.
And we get as close as we can in the rehearsal, and hopefully when we get to the performance, we're really able to realize all of this stuff.
Right.
But my job is to prepare them before that, so no matter what I do, they really will come with it.
All right. So I'm gonna make an assumption. You know what they say about that, but as I enjoy music, I've always enjoyed music. I've never totally understood what the conductor does. Right. And I think a lot of people probably don't understand what all the conductor's watching, looking for, correcting. They just think you're keeping time, maybe. And one of the things that occurs to me is every instrument section has their sheet music, but you also have your binder with sheet music, which I've seen, and it's a very impressive binder of sheet music. What music is laid out on the sheets? Do you have copies for every instrument? Is there a master copy that accounts for each instrument that you see on the sheet music? How does that work?
The conductor has the score, and the score has everything in it. So from the piccolo down to the basses, everything in between, all their notes, all their rests, all their markings of put a mute in or take a mute out or something like that. All of that is on my part, on the conductor's score. The players only have their own part.
Right.
They have the markings for the dynamics, the volume or speed up or whatever. All those things are there, but only their notes. So the oboe doesn't really know what the horn's doing unless they've played that part before and they've heard it.
Right.
So that each part really has to kind of play their thing, and we coordinate it from the front. So the conductor really is about coordinating all these things.
Right. There's a lot in there. So it's impressive to see what you're working with and to know that you really understand it and you know all of the different sections to have to keep up with. It seems like an amazing feat.
Well, it's just what we do, right? Everybody's business has something in it that someone from the outside looks at and goes, oh, I don't know how you,
right. Well,
how do, you do that? Yeah. Or you're really good at whatever. Well, I've been doing this for a long time. So. But I think the big deal for me is, or for any conductor, you really have to know all of the music before you get in front of the orchestra the first time. You don't learn the music on them. You practice in your mind, moving your hands if you need to, but you do all your practice ahead of time, and you need to have it memorized and ready to go and really known before you get in front of them the first time.
Wow, that's amazing. So, have you ever looked at writing your own music?
Yes. When I was in undergrad, I took a composition class and wrote some interesting, to the undergrad me, that they were very interesting pieces, right? Right.
Instant classics, I'm
sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And along the way, I've done some things for choirs, because when I wasn't an orchestra conductor, before I had that opportunity, I conducted choirs and handbell choirs and things like that, and I would arrange pieces or write things for them too.
Right.
So I've done several things like that, and mainly the composition practice takes so much time that I don't really have the time to devote to it. But I do spend a lot of time arranging things.
Okay.
So there's a small orchestra at the college that I do in addition to the Sherman Symphony. It's our student group, and they're getting ready to do something for an event on campus. Okay. And the students wanted to do several video game things because the event was had some kind of connection with video games. And so I found a bunch of these things and listened to them and arranged them for the strings. So I get to have at least a little bit of touch, not really composing, but arranging, kind of transcribing to make it sound good on the strings. So doing that makes me also think about how music is put together. Right. So when I'm conducting a regular score by Beethoven or Brahms or somebody, I'm thinking about from the inside how the composer think about using these harmonies and why these rhythms and why these instruments in particular. So
understand the goal that they had when they were putting it together.
Yeah, that's what I try to do.
Right. Well, good. You've talked about some of the other outside activities you have. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll give you a chance to catch a breath, and we'll go ahead and take a break. All right, welcome back. We're here with Dan Dominick, the music director of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra and the chair of the music department with Austin College. I'm Aaron Bucy, executive director of the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, and thank you for joining us. Dan, we were talking in the last segment about some of the projects that you do on the side beyond the Sherman Symphony, and you had assisted a student group with composing some music or arranging some music that they wanted to do for an event. How do you balance your academic responsibilities at Austin College, the musical responsibilities with the Sherman Symphony? How do you tie all that together into a schedule that doesn't tear you apart?
I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure I do a really good job at it. The thing that kind of suffers in all that is grading. Okay. Because I'm really good in the class. Well, I got my stuff together for the classroom, and the students know that everything is ready to go. The conducting and the score study and all those kinds of things take care of. Lots of times the grading gets a little further behind. So it's not easy.
I think that's a common, not a complaint, but a symptom of being a teacher at any level, at any subject, isn't it?
Yeah, and so all the homework every single day, and then those tests come in, and I get further behind, and I have to catch up.
Right.
So I have a schedule after doing it for so long that I try to keep to. On these days, I do these things. On these days, I do these things, and try not to cross them up. Also, in the summertime, I try to get ahead. People, think I've got vacation, people think teachers have vacation in the summer, but that's not true. It's during the summer that I try to get graphics and study and choosing of repertoire and projects taken care of, so that during the school year I don't have that, plus the teaching, plus the conducting.
Right. So there is one particular event that you kind of blend academics and music together, and that's something I want to talk about, was the children's concert that the Sherman Symphony Orchestra has done. How many years has that been going on?
I think this is our 21st year.
Okay. And for people that aren't familiar with it, just talk about a little bit what's offered at the children's concert and how it's presented.
When I first came, we didn't have a program at all, and I went to elementary schools and took cases of instruments, and would take them in there and open the instruments up and show the kids and talk about how they worked and all that kind of thing. And that's hard to do when there's lots and lots of elementary schools and kids want to see. So we started about 21 years ago with a full concert with the full orchestra in kid key, just like normal, with our black on, the whole thing. But we have a program that's written specifically for 5th graders.
Okay.
So it's meant to teach them the instruments of the orchestra, the families that the instruments sit in, talk about how music works, what the conductor does, all these different things about classical music that they wouldn't know if we didn't really kind of help them to hear these things. And we've gone from 500 or 600 in the audience to now we have 2 shows, and both of them are full. So we have like 2,400 kids that go through the program every year. And we're looking at next year maybe going to 3 because we have so many schools that want this program.
I think the last numbers that I saw on it were about 20 different school districts and almost 2,500 students that are going to come through. And how long are each children's concert?
50, 55 minutes.
Okay.
This is a full-size concert.
So this is 5th graders from around the region. They come in, they get their program that's tailored for 5th graders. They get to see a show. The show's not presented the same as you would see at a classical concert series. How is the show presented for 5th graders?
Well, to start with, we send out curriculum ahead of time. So before they even come, there's curriculum that we provide to the schools so they kind of know what to expect, but also kind of get warmed up on some ideas. And when they come in, we teach them about proper etiquette, when to clap, when not to clap, how to pay attention. We have 2 narrators. One of them is my beautiful wife.
Oh, good.
And the other one is kind of a rotation of different people in town that kind of have acting background that are very good at it.
Do you know who's doing that this year?
Yeah, I think I know who's doing it.
Yeah, you do? Yeah.
Dara Dunn.
Yeah.
Dara is director of the Sherman Community Players, a really good friend of mine and Laura, my wife's, and a really just great guy. He's a good actor. And anyway, so we have the narrators, and we have the full orchestra, and there's we'll go instrument by instrument where they actually play and stand up and show their instrument and play it. Yeah. Then we'll play each group of the instruments by themselves. Then we'll use that same piece of music where it was separate families, then put them together so you can hear how the orchestra changes.
And how do the kids react normally?
If you've seen pictures, they're just really rapt, and they really watch and they stay with it because we move along. We also put in some movie music, so there's some, we'll do a little bit of Star Wars because you have to do that.
Right.
But there's, maybe a Harry Potter or some other movie or cartoon movie where we put in the themes for that so they recognize some things. Yeah. But we also play full, straight-up classical things too, so they get a feel for what that is. I don't think we need to dumb down the music. We just need to explain how it works. Yeah. Once they understand, they'll get it too, and that seems like they always do.
That's good. It's really neat. I'm new to the Sherman Symphony, so I'm still getting acclimated with a lot of the processes and projects that have been ongoing. But I'm absolutely blown away at the scope of how many school districts that the symphony's been able to engage and get coming year after year and year after year. And that in itself is a testament to how good the program is, because schools continue to send their students there every year. And that's not easy for them to do.
Right.
You know, I think they're coming from, 20, 25 miles away sometimes?
We have schools coming from southern Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
We have schools coming from almost McKinney.
Right.
And we have schools east and west, Bonham and Gainesville.
Right.
So there's schools from, and if we were to open up to McKinney, I'm sure we could easily make a whole other day
Right.
of performances.
So, and I do want to say that I just want to point out that when you say we want to do another performance, this is not a money-making endeavor
No.
in any way.
It's free to schools.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have to get their transportation in, right? They have
Right.
to make that happen. But then we provide all their curriculum. We have a concert program that
Mm-hmm.
for the first time we'll be handing out in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we pay the musicians.
Right.
All the stuff that's done, all the rehearsal, everything is done on our dime, because we see the education as that
Right.
important.
And that's one of the main focuses of the mission itself for the Sherman Symphony
That's
Orchestra.
exactly it.
So, but I wanted to make sure that that was specifically said, so if there's any potential sponsors or donors, these are the things that the money goes to. And so that's just something that a lot of people probably don't understand, how much outreach there really is. And it's not cheap, it's not free, but it's going to really good projects.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And it's a big chunk of what our budget is.
Mm-hmm.
But we think it's so important that we spend the time educating kids in the area. Not all of them are going to be musicians. Surely not all of them are going to be professional musicians.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really the point.
Mm-hmm.
For them to learn what music is about and what it means,
Sure.
and that they can enjoy it, and maybe they could even make music themselves, that's what we'd like to kind of excite in them.
And they may just discover that they enjoy it and support their friends that get into it later. And so
Exactly.
it's just good all around. And it's an amazing program. I think it's fantastic, and I'm just flabbergasted at the scope of it. It's really, really interesting. So I'm going to wrap things up. What's your favorite instrument?
That's not fair. My kids play string instruments because, I do the orchestra. I picked up viola kind of late,
Okay.
but I began with piano, and that's really kind of what I do. It's what I feel most at home with.
Sure. What's your favorite show to conduct?
It's like asking a favorite composer, your favorite kid, right?
Uh-huh.
You can't. I really love all my kids.
Right.
I really love everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
I get to. The greatest thing is I get to choose the music. So we always do music.
It's always going to be
I
something
love.
you like. Yeah.
I
that's
love
good.
everything we do. So, and I feel like the audience will feel that, because there's nothing we do because it's now time to do this kind of composer, or we couldn't do things that were more difficult or whatever. We can play almost anything, and we always do things that we as an orchestra love.
Right. Very good. Good answers. And way to stay politically correct on it, too. So we're going to take a break, and we have a musical treat for you as soon as we come back, so don't go anywhere.
At the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, education is the foundation of our mission. Since 2002, tens of thousands of area fifth graders have attended our annual Children's Educational Concert at Kid Key Auditorium free of charge. This interactive program gives students a close-up look at the instruments of the orchestra and the musicians who play them. Students hear a wide variety of music ranging from familiar movie tunes to classical standards. The wonder on their faces confirms that there is no substitute for a live concert experience. This is why we also give students of all ages free tickets for our Classical Series concerts. To learn more and help support our mission, visit www.shermansymphony.org.
Welcome back. We hope you've enjoyed this pilot episode, Sitting with the Symphony. We've had Dan Dominick on the show. Dan, as you'll notice, is not in the frame with me at the moment. That's because he has agreed to perform a wonderful piece called Butterflies by Edvard Grieg. so much for coming in. We sure appreciate it. Thank you so much for playing on the piano. That was wonderful. So good. Come out, check out the Sherman Symphony Orchestra on October 28th at Kid Key Auditorium. See Dan conduct. We're going to have a performance of Tchaikovsky No. 6, Pathétique. So be sure and come on out. ShermanSymphony.org is the website. Go check it out. Get your tickets. Find us on Facebook, social media. Thanks, everybody.
At the Sherman Symphony Orchestra, education is the foundation of our mission. Since 2002, tens of thousands of area 5th graders have attended our annual Children's Educational Concert at Kid Key Auditorium free of charge. This interactive program gives students a close-up look at the instruments of the orchestra and the musicians who play them. Students hear a wide variety of music ranging from familiar movie tunes to classical standards. The wonder on their faces confirms that there is no substitute for a live concert experience. This is why we also give students of all ages free tickets for our Classical Series concerts. To learn more and help support our mission, visit www.shermansymphony.org.